there, someone else is flying a drone. All this space up here is restricted. You can't fly a drone around here. There's an airport right over there. Now I don't feel quite as risky. G'day guys, Tills20 here and welcome back to Sichuan Province. Today's episode's a bit of a mammoth one. I don't usually record them this long, but I honestly just couldn't stop playing, I couldn't stop recording, and by the time I knew it, it's up to about 30 minutes, or actually it was up to about 40 minutes. It was about 40 minutes of footage that I ended up recording for this, and I just had to condense it into what is about 30 minutes, so there's a lot of footage that I had to delete. So pretty much everything in this video is what I think pretty decent. So yeah, either apologies or you're welcome, depending on how you look at it. I'm looking at 30 minutes of commentary and thinking, oh god, how am I going to talk for 30 minutes? But I'm sure I'll figure out a way. I usually only record these things for about 20. But it is a fairly decent episode because a lot of stuff that I do, I really enjoyed building. And today we're mostly focusing around this this bridge where basically the highway stretches underneath the downtown, and then where that bridge stretches off to, that goes onto the financial district. So we are pretty much in the heart of the downtown, and on the other side of the river is where the financial district is, which will be a fairly commercial and businessy area. The main focus for this particular build is to develop a bit of residential, so we're going to be mostly placing down apartment blocks in this episode, but really focusing on a lot of detail work because I've been expanding out the city a fair bit over the last little while, and I wanted to focus on some more detail work and make some areas just really fit the scene when you get nice and close. I haven't really been doing too much of that. And in this episode, I do some really cool work around this highway. I place down some really great walkways. You'll see that towards the end of the episode. That I think that turned out really nice. And yeah, just like structuring and figuring out some of the different road layouts, and still developing my technique for detailing this city because I'm still not that confident when it comes to detailing a Chinese style city because I'm fairly new to it. This series is only 8 episodes old and I'm still getting the hang of it. So that's mostly what the focus of today's episode is, and there's a lot of footage, so just be prepared for that. The first part of this episode is me trying to fix up this pretend highway that goes underground. I call it pretend because it actually doesn't lead anywhere, it just pretends to go underground. If you missed the last episode, I really struggled with these roads because they're not, you probably noticed they're not from the vanilla game. These are downloaded assets by a Mammaline, I believe his name is, or their name is. And these are really highly detailed, really quite amazing roads, but they are fairly limited when it comes to certain things. For certain areas, they're amazing, and then for other aspects of, city planning and trying to connect things up, that it's just like impossible to connect. This is just one of those situations where I just couldn't connect it up to anything else, and I'm sure if I probably, worked on it for another 10 hours, and I probably could figure it out, but I was pretty much at the end of my tether, and that was it. Pretty much, this is as good as it got. So this road doesn't go anywhere. So I wanted to make a pretend tunnel and instead make it look like it goes underground and connects up somewhere to the downtown, even though it doesn't. So to create this tunnel, I ended up using a bunch of different props. You're mostly seeing this I think it might be a tunnel pack that was released ages ago by Ronix. That's the bulk of it, and that's basically just the concrete blocks that I'm using. But I'm also testing out, and this is a technique I'm going to use a fair bit of, but I'm basically using this ploppable surface, which again is by Ronix, just to basically blend it in with the rest of the environment, because there is a lot of pavement around, so this actually just really helps to blend it into you know, the bases of these apartment blocks. And generally what I was trying to achieve was I wanted a lot of the areas around the base of the apartment block to you know, feel like they were its own secured section that had planters like gardens and places to sit, so park benches and lighting, and a shed that was probably used for maintenance. Also, parking for bikes and for cars is really important too, so I made sure that there was, you know, areas for some sort of parking, and these fences as well just really helped to, you know, really create that privacy and create that realism too, that I think really worked out nicely. This area is fairly detailed. I wanted to keep it really detailed, but you know, generally I'm not detailing every square inch of my city, because we do have a lot of apartment blocks, so it's going to be pretty much impossible to do so. I end up leaving this section without placing down any of the trees and the planters, but I do come back to it, and you'll see it in the cinematics at the end. But basically, I didn't have any trees that I could raise up, so all of my trees were just regular style of trees. They weren't props. That's the really tricky part of Sichuan Province at this stage, is that I'm only using trees that are regular trees in the game that conform to the land, and that makes it really tricky when you're working with ploppable asphalt and areas that are raised above land. So if you guys have any suggestions or any ideas for props that are trees, then let me know. I'll link them in the description below. That would be really helpful. I ended up grabbing a couple of Mr. Mason ones that he created. I believe they are ones that have like fairy lights on them, and they look awesome. Like I'm really happy with them, but I can only use them, I guess, so much because they do have fairy lights. So they are a little bit more unique. It just so happens that a lot of the trees in China have got lights on them, so that actually works out really nicely. In fact, pretty much like all the cities in China really light up quite amazingly at night. So yeah, expect a few nighttime shots. Actually, I might even include some nighttime shots in the next episode. I don't in this one. But yeah, I mean, this city is starting to look pretty decent at night. But how good is this section now looking? Placing down some trees and some foliage, and I'm really going to town with it, because this city is just fairly. It's got a fair bulk of trees and grass cover, and I really love it. Just detailing those sections and place down heaps of trees, particularly underneath the overpass, because I just think that's just, you know, generally where a lot of the foliage will be. And this apartment block too, I really love the way this section turned out. Just yeah, I just think it's a real contrast between the different colors of the rest of the city. A lot of the city is white, like a lot of the buildings are white and grey, whereas these buildings have just got this really great brownish color. And yeah, I just love it. I just think it looks so cool. Last episode, I was working on this little corner that I built. It's very custom. It's a little bit, yeah, it's a bit iffy, but yeah, I do fix it up a little bit in this episode. So you will see like the pretty much the final version of it. But cars are used in this section. So this on-ramp is connected up to that main highway that goes across the river, and this on-ramp takes you through the tunnel and then bypasses the city. Unfortunately, I couldn't get any cars, or there wasn't any way that I could connect up from the downtown to this road so that cars could then go to the financial district. I'm gonna have to figure out a way of doing that around the other section of the river, because I think we're going to need it. As you can see, we're already starting to get a fair bit of traffic. I'm gonna have to do like a solid episode just based on traffic. I'm not really too worried at this stage because we're still figuring out the general road layout, and I do have to admit, traffic does make it look a little bit more realistic. I actually hate it when there's not very many cars driving around in my city, because it just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a city when it's like that. This is probably like the perfect amount of traffic. I know it's, you know, people are probably going like, dude, you're city's so terrible because there's heaps of traffic on this intersection, but I don't know. I personally really like it, and I'm sure there's a lot of you guys out there that actually like to see it like this too. Because yeah, I'm generally going for a realistic city. I wanted to feel and have a realistic and atmospheric environment that you'd sort of see within a city in China, or any city in general. And when you see cities cities and city skylines that don't have any traffic, I don't know. I really don't like that. But in saying that, the traffic is getting pretty horrendous in this city. There's a lot you can't see, and that's mostly because I haven't really done anything to fix it up. Mostly just been figuring out the general layout, and then I'll come back and fix it up in a much better fashion. So expect a traffic episode coming up in the next couple of weeks or so. By the way, if you ever want to download Sichuan Province and play what I'm doing right now, then it is available to patrons. If you are interested, it's just one of the perks you get to play on the save, which is pretty exciting. I know a lot of my patrons have been playing on it and been messaging me and sending me some screenshots of crazy things that they've been up to and changing a lot of the environment and adding bits and pieces which I hadn't even thought about adding. So if you are interested in downloading the save game, then yeah, you can visit my Patreon page, which is in the description below. And if you are enjoying this video, this is a message I always leave to the very end, but if you are enjoying it, then leaving a like does help me out a lot. I said this message at the beginning of an episode a couple of weeks ago, and the likes on that video doubled. It was ridiculous. I couldn't believe it when I looked back on it. So if you do like this video, then don't forget to like the video. That does help my channel out a bunch. And actually, you'll be so surprised how many people are watching my channel who aren't subscribed. So again, if you do enjoy what I'm doing, then hit the subscribe button. Blah 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 blah. I don't want to sound like one of those regular YouTubers, but yeah, saying things like that actually does help out a bit. So, gotta say it every now and again. Alrighty, what I am doing. The whole reason why you're watching this video is to see what I'm up to and for me to talk about it. And what I've been up to is I've started doing the detail work around here. Now we are pretty much in the downtown, and I wanted it to really feel like the downtown. I wanted it to feel really busy and be quite prop heavy in terms of the amount of detail work around here. Some streets are going to be really detailed, other streets nothing, because let's build a big city. I don't want to focus too much on all the nitty-gritty of the detail in every single street, but this particular street I wanted it to be fairly detailed. So again, placing down a whole bunch of parking spaces for bikes. Bikes are massive in China, which is really amazing because bikes in Australia are pretty lousy. We're not quite on top of biking as other countries, but in China, bikes are huge. Motorbikes, scooters, push bikes, everything. So I thought it would be really a really good idea if I have a lot of different places for bunches of bikes just to be parked. And I plan to do this in a whole bunch of different areas, again just in the more detailed areas. So I made sure there's a real mixture of different bikes in that section. This little section, what I'm working on right now, is an entrance to a hotel, and I was really enjoying this area, so I decided just to put a little bit of detail work into it, just having it its own little private entrance and private driveway where limousines come on up, and I thought I might try and just make it just a little bit more of like a Chinese style, because I just was really conscious that I was just sort of like building a very generic style. So I decided to place down some of these lions, because you see a lot of these lions in different locations around Chongqing. And I think I ended up placing down some flags. They probably don't totally match. They probably got some writing on that to say, like, I don't know, something that has nothing to do with probably has nothing to do with a hotel, but I don't speak Chinese, and if I'm going to worry about every little image that I place down and its meaning behind what I'm doing, then we're probably not going to be able to get anywhere. So if you do speak Chinese and you are reading this, then yeah, apologies if it has nothing to do with this hotel. I'm just going to be placing down any signs and any billboards, and hopefully none of them say anything bad, pretty much. But if you can point me in the right direction, like if I scroll past something that is perfect for that area, or if you do know something like an asset that you think is perfect for something, or you're an asset creator and you want to make me something, then please let me know in the comments, or just hit me up on Twitter or on anything. Then yeah, I'll be so inclined to place that down. But for the time being, I'm really just just trying to make the best out of what I've got. So now we're back to the highway. And in this section, I wanted to just detail up this apartment area. We now are working around some apartment blocks that are a little bit more older style and a little bit more run down. And you know, as modern as a lot of the cities are in China, these apartment blocks are very common. And yeah, I just can't believe how realistic these are. Like the actual asset themselves aren't, you know, that well textures. I think there's a couple little weird glitchy things going on, but in terms of like getting the essence of this block down and, you know, how these apartments really look, I think that this really just comes to life. You know, you went to put a bit more detail work onto it, but I really am happy with how this ends up being detailed. And I think it's mostly these fences and these walls that I placed down, I think add a lot to the environment. I've said this a lot, but I really think that placing down fences is like one of the most simplest things you can do in terms of gaining realism. A lot of trees. Don't be afraid to place down tons of trees, because, you know, you'll be surprised how many areas have you know, quite a lot of foliage, and it's something that I always have to tell myself, like, don't be afraid just to really go heavy on the trees. And you might be thinking I'm probably going a bit too heavy in a, you know, pretty busy city like what I'm building, but the city that I'm basing it off, Chongqing, is actually insanely leafy. It's quite incredible how much foliage there is, and in between all these apartment blocks, and, you know, pretty much underneath any of these highways, you have like mass growth of forest. It's really quite amazing, and I think it's really just says a lot about the environment, because Chongqing is just up in these mountains, and it's, you know, these rivers that are running through, so I just think that forest just grows so quickly. I reckon that like at stages a lot of this area would have been cleared, but then I just think that forest just overtakes the landscape really quite fast. So I'm trying to like get a real mix of forest that looks like it's wild, and then some planned trees, so trees that are in lines, and trees that are you know, they look more introduced, and some of these like really nice big trees too, that I'm mostly placing around the base of these apartment blocks. This is my favorite part of the episode. Oh, actually, sorry, I take that back. My favorite part of the episode is in about, I don't know, 7 minutes. But basically the detail work I end up doing around this highway, I just thought, you know what, let's just go for it. I'm just gonna really detail this area, because I just think it'd be such an interesting area to get really nice and detailed. Again, placing down some signs. Now, this is where I really want you guys just to have a bit of an understanding, particularly if you speak Mandarin, or if you can understand the type of characters that I'm placing down, because I have no idea what they say. This big red sign that you can see, I'm sure it says, I have no idea what it says, basically. No idea what it says. If you can translate what this sign says to me, I would be really appreciative of it. At the moment, I just like what it looks like and where it sits. I just think it looks really cool, there being this nice big red sign there. I just think it's very iconic to the types of city planning decisions in China. Signs are pretty much everywhere, and they're in such peculiar locations sometimes like right in your face, particularly like areas like this. I'm pretty sure I'm basing this off one that I have somewhere in the back of my mind that I saw that was sitting up above of a tunnel, so I think I might be channeling a little bit of that. But I really love the positioning of this, but I just have no idea what it says. So if you can translate that for me, that'd be great. I might keep it if it's just not appropriate in that location, but I might not keep it if it's not appropriate in that location. I'm pretty sure I said that the wrong way around. At the moment, I really like it, but if you got it again, if you got another suggestion of something that would be better suited there, then I'll probably change it. Behind the sign, you can see that I've placed down a pavilion, which is like a bit of an awning, and there's also this restaurant as well that I've placed down. I just think that looks really cool. I really wanted to make this area like a little bit touristic, because I think a lot of people would be eating at this restaurant and then crossing the bridge, which I think would be like a really awesome location to get shots of photos, and it would be like this really great walk. I know that when I was in Chongqing, I did like heaps of walks across the bridges because they were just like the most iconic areas, and you got the best shots from over there. So I wanted to include something really similar, and do something that gave the same vibe as when I was crossing the river. You'll actually see me work on what is my favorite section of this video, which is basically the walkway that goes over the river, and I just really love the way all that turns out. You can see how massive this episode is. It's like full of layers. You've probably forgotten that we actually worked on this tunnel, and we also did some city detail. This is like 3 episodes for me. But before we do get there, I am just still detailing this area because I really wanted it to be a complete picture, particularly when I start taking those cinematics and you can really start seeing this place come to life. Continuing just work on the residential areas, really just focusing on placing down pretty much as many apartment blocks as possible, and really just trying to fill in the space. Again, just working on another older style apartment block. This one has a group of shops underneath. The shops themselves, the graphics don't look that like too crash hot. They're a little bit blurry and a bit stretched. However, I think the asset itself, like just the whole essence of the asset, is just totally perfect. I mean, this is exactly the type of buildings that are in China. So I really just wanted to use it, even though it's a little bit off. There's a couple of assets that I'm using. I'm pretty much just subscribed to pretty much everything that was like a Chinese asset, regardless of its quality. Most of them are really fantastic. Some of them need a little bit more work. Some of the people who upload them are like the first assets I've ever uploaded. So I've never uploaded something, so that's really just shows my level of ability. But yeah, if you do say something that's a little bit off, that's probably because it's only the first one someone's ever uploaded. But I've just grabbed it anyway because I think they still fit in regardless. How good is that little courtyard, by the way, that I just built just underneath that apartment block? I really love that little area. Yeah, I just really love it. I think it's really cool. That's pretty much like the focus for this episode, is just building up those little courtyards. But now we are focusing on, I think, my favorite part of this episode, and that is developing this walkway. It was really challenging, actually, mostly because I didn't have any paths that were thin enough. I also wanted to create a my own custom path that followed along this highway, mostly because I wanted it to follow like a particular style, and it really needed to navigate its way around the on and off ramps. So I really couldn't just drag one across because it just didn't look right. So what I've done is I've used this deck that I think is mostly for over the top of highways. It works really nicely for this section though, and what it is pretty much a prop. You've seen me use it quite a lot of times in the series, but if you haven't before, it's a prop that I place down, and then I've got to drag a invisible pathway underneath it. And somebody actually gave me the really great suggestion to drag a like a vanilla path, and then once it's all in line and everything's all in the right spot, then just convert it to an invisible one, and that way I can align things much easier than before. So yeah, thank you to whoever suggested that. That is a really, really useful technique, and I do it a lot in this episode. Something that you're not going to see. Oh man. So basically I've disabled autosave in this in my game, mostly because it was lagging out my game so much. Whenever it did an autosave, it would lag out my game so much that it would crash. So I turned it off. I've actually had it turned off for probably about 2 years now. And 99% of the time it's fine, except for when my game actually does crash, and it's just the absolute worst thing in the world. Yeah, basically my game did crash at some point. I've actually built this walkway twice, if you can believe it. Pretty much from the start of me building all this walkway, up until finishing it off, and up to the very end of the episode, I had built, and then I was recording the cinematics, and then it crashed, and I pretty much just like turned off the computer and walked away and cried. It was just the worst thing ever, because this actually took a really long time to do. It took me like about 3 days to come back to the game and play it again, because I was just so angry. But this, what you're looking at right now, is the redone version of it. So I ended up coming back and redoing it. I almost didn't, I almost just left it, because I did already complete it, and I had almost finished recording the cinematics, but then I just came back and recorded it. Obviously the new version is better than the old one, but it was very painful to witness. Anyway, yeah, as you can see, people are walking up these stairs in a pretty realistic manner. I worked really hard to get that working correctly. So as you saw, the nodes and the segments for this pathway, I got them really, really close, and I connected them up really precisely, so that it really looks like the people are walking up and down the stairs. I think there's like a little bit of a glitch, but that's about it. It's pretty damn close. You'll also see that the pathway goes underneath this on-ramp, and then connects back up to the bridge. That bridge then snakes its way all the way across the river, and you'll see the path will go across there too, which means that you'll see people walking across the pathway, and you'll see heaps and heaps of people choosing that option, which is just such a cool sight. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It just looks really great when you see people actually using the bridge as a means of getting from one place to the other. I don't really see that in other, like, to be honest, in any of my other builds I've ever done in my series, I've never really seen people use this walkway quite like they have, yeah, quite like they're doing this one. I think it might be because there's not really much of an access to the downtown. The road layout doesn't really quite get you there. Probably doesn't get you there as well as the walkway does. So just look forward to like seeing a lot of people using it. It's really quite cool. But yeah, as you can also see, it's really quite finicky working with these little props. They are quite tricky, and you know, although they are really powerful and really you know, there's quite a lot you can do with them, they are very tricky to navigate and work around. And also something you can probably see, the bridge, the actual the road, what am I trying to say? The road glitches out a little bit and might disappear and reappear in certain areas. That's because I've really spaced out the nodes, because that was like my way of removing the pillars instead of using the network skins mod, because that was causing quite a lot of lag, at least the old version. I've now resubbed to the network skins 2. It's the better version, but it's as in BETA version. It is actually better, BETTER version. It is heaps better, but yeah, I just hadn't downloaded it before, but now I am subbed to it, which is making a huge difference, and you won't see that disappearing effect anymore. Last thing, I wanted there to be a little bit of a courtyard entering that section of the walkway, because this is quite a touristic area. Like I said before, I want there to be a fair bit of people. I'm seeing a bit of people walking around, and I thought it might be a good location for restaurants and eateries and stuff like that. But as we do draw closer to the end of the episode, I'm going to ask you guys again, if you have enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to leave some nice feedback. It doesn't have to be nice, it can just be constructive feedback if you really want to. I don't really mind. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, then I hope you do so if you have enjoyed this content and want to see some more. But guys, that is it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next week, you'll be watching Marble Mountain. I've got a seriously cool build for you. I'm really excited to show you what I end up getting up to. If you want to see what I do in that, follow me on Twitter. I'll release some teasers very shortly. But that is it. Have a good week. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.